Phil Ittner, the veteran war correspondent based out of Kyiv, Ukraine. His video blog can be found over at YouTube. Just plug in his name, Philip Ittner. It's 6 letters each name, Philip Ittner, and it'll pop right up. His Twitter handle is IttnerPhilip, the reverse. Phil, welcome back to the program. I understand that you guys have been getting, you guys being Kyiv, specifically Ukraine more generally, just getting brutalized by this fascist dictator next door, Vladimir Putin. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, certainly over the New Year's Eve holiday, we were attacked 2 times in about 4 days, on the 29th and then again on the 2nd, with a massive barrage of, take your pick. We had drones, we had missiles, we had hypersonic missile systems, all aimed indiscriminately, as far as we can determine, on various cities throughout Kiev, throughout Ukraine. But obviously, yes, Kiev was a primary target of this. And I was each day on the 29th and again on the 2nd. The Russians like to start their attacks early in the morning, as people are waking, so that they're not so disposed or able to get into shelters. And, on the 29th, it was about a 5-hour period from, I would say, 5:30 until around 10 in the morning. Every 20 or 45 minutes, roughly, something would be coming in or something would be going up into the sky as the Ukrainians deployed their air defense systems, which are significantly good. I mean, they are very good at defending cities, the Ukrainians are, with their air defense. But this wave after wave of things coming here, they were just simply overwhelmed. Now, in addition to that, something is happening with the air war, and we don't know exactly what it is. So it is possible that some of Ukraine's air defense systems were moved away from cities to take care or to be participants in the frontline fighting. This is I can't, because a lot of what the Ukrainian military does, it does with operational security, and so it doesn't talk about what it's doing. We don't know this for sure, but it did seem to me on both the 29th and then again on the 2nd that while Kiev's air defense was working at top capacity, it was different. And most notably, I didn't see, and none of the reported witnesses from those days saw any activity from a Patriot anti-defense, anti-air defense system, which the Americans have given at least 1 battery to the Capitol. That was not active from any reports and from my eyewitness.
Interesting.
So it's possible that was moved forward. The Germans are giving 2 more. Maybe they're backfilling. We don't know.
Right.
But the most important thing, Tom, is that, yes, the Russians continue to attack civilian infrastructure for no other reason than to try and bomb Ukrainians into submission. And, it's just not working. It's quite the opposite is happening. Every Ukrainian that I speak to, whether it's in a professional capacity or as friends, there's no fear. There is fear. Obviously, there's fear. But fear is not the ultimate result of what the Russians are doing. Anger is. And the Ukrainians continue to resist. And their response to these indiscriminate Russian attacks is absolute resistance, resilience, and anger.
Yeah,
that's the only result that I see.
I completely get it, and I think if Mexico was bombing the United States on a regular basis, we'd be pretty pissed off too. Last week, I think it was last Thursday or Friday, maybe it was earlier than that. I saw and I think this is the first time we've talked in a couple of weeks, because we took a couple of weeks off.
Yeah, because of the holidays.
Yeah, so Happy New Year to you, Phil.
Hope you had a good one.
Yeah, thank you. Back at you. But sometime in the last week or so, there was news reports that lasted for maybe 2 days in the news cycle, just popping up randomly in major newspapers, suggesting that Vladimir Putin was on the verge of saying, yes, I'll negotiate. Let me keep a little bit of this land and, you know, stop picking on me and I'll stop bombing your cities. Was that BS? I mean, what's the status of this? What, you know,
well, when it comes to Vladimir Putin, you can never know.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem is there's because of Putin's, and not just Putin, but the Russian military, the Russian position on the war that is allowed to be made public. Now there's every possibility that there's a lot of dissatisfaction with the war that we don't know about because Russia is not a free society. They're not allowed to speak openly. So we don't know exactly if Putin is earnest or sincere in his desire to open negotiations. Surely he would not open negotiations and then capitulate land. That would be not only can we be distrustful of Putin in that sense, but also because for him to capitulate and return Ukrainian held territory, or even frankly, as the situation lies right now, would put Putin in significant political jeopardy, and right. For him to lose office, in a situation like that, he doesn't just lose office. He very well could be looking at prison or worse, yeah. Because once he loses power, he'll have no way of defending himself. And if he were to capitulate or to start negotiations with the lay of the land as it is now, a lot of Russians would be wondering what it was all for, because they've lost, for example, their aspirations to conquer Odessa are completely gone. I've been to it many times in the last 2 years, and that city will not be Russian anytime soon. Much less ever again. That blow to Putin would be devastating. Not least of which to also mention that Crimea is still in a very precarious spot for the Russians, and that would be a hard pill for them to swallow. People talk an awful lot about what number will it be? How many casualties will the Russians suffer before they really start to talk about peace or negotiations or ending this war? And I think there is a number out there.
Well, that was a question I wanted to ask you, because the other story that I saw over the last couple of weeks is that there is a movement actually in Russia that is largely kind of self-organizing on social media and on Telegram of mothers and wives, yes, who are saying, bring home our men.
Yes, and that historically has had effect. Mm-hmm. We saw it in Afghanistan and we saw it in Chechnya.
Yeah.
This is different, though, I would argue. Knowing I've spent time in Russia, I've lived in Russia, I've studied Russia for over a quarter century. And doubly sorry. The thing, here's the thing. We talk an awful lot about what is the number. I don't think it's a number, because the Russian elite have elicited the history, the mythology, the religion that is the Second World War, and in a war in which they lost, hundreds of thousands, millions of people.
Right.
And so they have elicited this mythology, and they have brought that to the battlefield as well. So it may not be a number. It may be land, territory, strategic importance. Where does Russia see itself as an empire? Where do the Russian people see themselves as an empire? And so much of that is tied into the Black Sea and Crimea. So there may not be a number. I'm sure there is. But we in the West need to stop thinking about in terms of how many Russians killed in this. The Russians have shown themselves historically to be able to suffer massive losses if they believe their cause is an existential threat to their sovereignty, their idea of Russia as empire. So it may not be a body count that we're looking for, as callous as that sounds. It may be the disillusionment that Russia can sustain itself as empire. Right. And without the Black Sea, and primarily Crimea, they won't be able to do that. So to dissuade them of the idea that you can gain territory through force of arms and you can conquer territory and maintain your sense of empire, to dissuade them of that will be more debilitating than the loss of any number, within
I get
reason.
It. Phil, I'm curious if by the way, we have a minute and a half until we hit a hard break. I'm curious. What's the status of the Ukrainian Air Force right now? What has happened with these promised F-16s? And could it be that Russia has been pouring missiles into Ukraine right now because they are anticipating the inability to do so coming along fairly soon, since many of them are launched by aircraft, once those F-16s are in the air? Or are they in the air now?
We don't know. This is, again, the other thing that I, as I mentioned, something is happening in the air war, and we don't know what it is. The Ukrainians are playing a very, very, secret shadow kind of situation, close to the vest. Operational security. You don't want to tell. There was a general recently who said, I hope the West has learned that we don't need to broadcast what it is that we are receiving and putting it operational. So there's a lot of talk about what is happening with the air war. Obviously, what happened on the 29th and the 2nd was some sort of, they did it last year during New Year's, but there's something else going on here. And there's a lot of talk of aircraft being downed, certainly within the southeast part of the front line area. We have seen missile launches, cruise missile launches. Of course, there was the massive sinking of that amphibious assault vessel in Feodosia, Crimea, that was hit by Ukrainian cruise missiles launched by jets. Something's going on with the air war, and it's going to get more intense, I suspect. So we don't know exactly. The F-16s might actually be operational right now.
Yeah.
Certainly something.
As you said, an F-16 just started flying over our place. Phil Ittner. Check him out on YouTube. Phil Ittner, Ittner. Thanks, Phil.
Always a pleasure, Tom.